Welcome back to realestateexperts.com Real Estate Show. I'm Brian Crabtree. Liberal straws. This is more of a joke. These are these paper straws that are populating the country to save the planet. Plus, illegals at our schools, and you're paying for it, and how they're helping the illegals through instruction, at least at Atlanta public schools, to avoid detection. That's coming up, and I'm not exaggerating here. You probably believe that. But I want to get back to what I was talking about. I started out with insurance fraud this show, and this is because I've seen it in the housing business. When you put an asset up there that's worth $400,000 and you engage insurance today and there's a payment, the insurance company is going to try everything they can not to pay you, no matter how meticulous you've been. I've had 2 instances of that this year. And even if they do try to pay you, they're going to try to pay you less than what you are owed for the problem. Now, that's not necessarily on the surface all bad, but what is bad is when they're starting to make things up or be negligent in order to make it part of the process that no matter how legitimate your claim is, they don't want to pay, which is fraud. If you go into a contract that says if this thing burns down and it burns down and you don't want to pay because you want to say, well, this happened. You know, a 50-cent item somehow is the linchpin in a $10 million item or a $10,000 item. That starts to become very fraudulent. And that's like robbing Granny without a gun, because the weaker people in the middle class and below don't have the ability, unless they get a good lawyer at a great expense, to fight the insurance company. So the insurance company has automatically, in most cases, postured themselves against you or the person I'm talking about in theory here, such that they can then use the fact that you're going to lose a lot of money with a lawyer to leverage you for a settlement that is significantly less than what they actually owe. That's really theft without a gun. The insurance companies have always been bad, but now they've gotten so over the top, we've got to do something about it. We've got to get our legislators to understand we've got to stack the deck against the insurance companies. And when we do, rates go up. I get it. But it's better to pay more for insurance and get paid when there's a problem than to pay less and get nothing, because otherwise, when you pay less and get nothing, you've paid out money and got nothing for it, as opposed to paying out too much and never having to use it. I would much rather have the latter than the former. Then you move on to the robbery. I used an example of talking to someone that works at Chase Bank, who's remaining anonymous here, who says to me that they get someone in the branch almost every day, sometimes more, who tries to cash a bad check they've manufactured or similar and take money out of someone's account. And they've learned that at a certain number, $100, $200, they can get away with it because there's no way the tellers can vet through every check and reach every client at the point of cashing it to make sure that every check is legitimate. Then you take a look at the situation with law enforcement. How can they track down $200 problems? You got an individual who goes from bank to bank to bank to bank and does this 20 times. They've made themselves a nice living for the month, defrauding, and I'm using this as an analogy, Granny. Well, most of those people, if there were 100 of them doing it in Metro Atlanta right now, maybe Granny's getting robbed. The reason we have less physical violence crime, by statistics we do. This is an argument conservatives, and I'm one of them, using gun control arguments. We have much less violent crime in the country by statistics than we used to. Well, the reason is because now we can rob Granny without a gun. So we've created far more criminals because the violent criminals have now created gangs of crime that doesn't involve holding a gun to somebody's head. They're just robbing us blind. And when they do, the companies that have to deal with this stuff, that have been robbed, that we've been robbed, we do business with a bank, they get robbed, or we get robbed through a bad check that's not a check we've written. The bank makes it so tough on us to collect back our money that a lot of times we don't get our money back. Not worth messing with it. There's too many of these situations for the police to catch all these people and round them up and throw them in jail. And then that's a different form of government assistance and entitlement, because now we've got a bunch of people in jail we're paying to keep in jail because we got to keep them out of society because they're robbing us blind. Same thing's happening in insurance. Insurance has been defrauded a lot. That does not, two wrongs don't justify a right. Insurance has been defrauded, so they've gotten a lot more egregious at stopping and defrauding. Now they're defrauding us. And what's happening is that we aren't really getting a handle on the technology situation in America and how the digital world that we're in is really making our lives more complicated and difficult to enjoy than it is to actually it was 30 years ago to just survive. I don't want to sound like an old fogey here, and I'm not, but I literally remember when I first got a flip phone. Remember the Smart Tac Motorola phone? I think that was the heyday. Not the time in 1980, when you're sitting there and you don't have any technology and life is kind of boring and you actually had to talk to people. By God, if we had to do that today, what would we do? We'd all be arguing even more, right? But back then, we never got along, but we kind of got to know each other better and could deal through our relationships a little better because we were forced for entertainment purposes to interact. And I think when we brought about the cellular telephone and we reached that point of a Motorola StarTAC. This was in the late 90s to early part of the 2000s. And I could sit in my bed with a decent internet connection, nothing to write home about compared to today, and do a few things that were fun online on a Wi-Fi connection, 2003, 2004. I think we peaked. We peaked 15 years ago because at that point, technology was an asset. It was a tool that didn't do much, didn't think about much, but allowed us to connect better. We could interact, we could connect, we could do things. A real estate transaction was driven by the intelligent people in the business and not some protocols generated automatically by a computer that thinks for everyone. That's destroyed the real estate business because now no one can get past the computer flags and protocols. A mortgage in the real estate business is now automatically approved or declined based upon the intelligence and the input of the data, accuracy or not, that is given by the people who are applying for the loan. Don't put it in right, declined. You have to go somewhere else, maybe approved. But there's not any thought process anymore to this stuff. And so because of that, when we've taken away the human judgment, due to crookedness inherent of human nature anyway, we have created much more crime. So instead of having the crime where Granny got robbed with a gun, which wasn't that many compared to the number of times Granny's being stolen from now by electronic means on checking accounts and insurance and such. We lessen the physical danger. That's a good thing. And we greatly exponentially increased the chance of loss. So now you have an insurance claim. Good luck getting paid, or at least getting made whole again. Didn't used to be that simple of a statement. There were times you didn't get made whole because of bad insurance companies, but if you had bad insurance companies, there were enough good ones that people would go to. That means that there was accountability to being a bad insurance company. Good banks and bad banks, same thing. Used to be enough good banks that the bad banks couldn't make it. There aren't that many good banks anymore. Not saying there's none. And so when you look at these scenarios, and I've said it, I used this analogy last weekend. Look at the telecommunications business and cellular telephones. This is my opinion. You may not share it. The only company that is producing added net subscribers to their telephone service every month in cellular in America of the major brands is T-Mobile. In the last 3 years, I've had an experience with all of the major brands: Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, US Cellular, and a couple others. By far, T-Mobile has the best customer service I have seen in the telecommunications business in more than a decade. 2 decades, starting back to MCI. I am just stunned at the culture and the attitude when I go into any store, anywhere in America I'm in. The telephone people at the front lines on the phone when I dial the 611 or call T-Mobile directly on the toll-free number. And the general functionality of, I have a problem, okay, we're going to fix it. I just simply seem to think they got their you-know-what together. Are they perfect? By no means. They're too big to be. No big mega company is going to be perfect. But the crossroads of delivering a great experience to the customer that is acceptable or better, combined with being a for-profit company, is very clear. In America, we are desperate as consumers for a company that wows us. I will stay with T-Mobile as long as I get that service. I don't care who comes along cheaper. I will go fly Delta because for me, Brian Crabtree, when I fly on Delta Airlines, as I said last weekend, If it's $75 more a leg, I'll pay it because when I have a problem, they'll fix it. 9 times out of 10. Are there bad people at Delta? Yes, there's bad people at every place in the world. But when the overwhelming majority, and I said overwhelming, of people in a situation, company, or problem are trying to do the right thing, I think it's time in America that we have the ability in any business to excel at our business by trying to do the right thing. But it's not happening. There aren't many Delta Airlines and T-Mobiles. Most of them are Verizons and AT&Ts, where the posture is, you're wrong, we're right, we want our money, and 50 cents be damned. We're going to screw you. And it's not just because they're crooked by the nature of their morals and ethics or lack thereof. It's because the people they hire are incompetent, incapable of listening, a product of a very bad school system, a trajectory of political nature, politics at its worst, where people are pitting each other against each other and they don't have to think because they are empowered with no accountability. If I'm a bad customer service representative, but I kiss the boss's ASS and toe the company line, no matter how many customers I'm ticking off in the process, I look good because the metrics that measures me are nothing more than dollars and cents. And be damned what it does to the country or the company in the future, country too. This is how it has become that Granny used to only get robbed with a gun, and now Granny's getting robbed sometimes more than once a year. But no one has to pull the weapon anymore because we've stacked the cards against Americans in favor of a few bad people at the top. We'll be right back.